Can you hear my bells? Okay, let's start. Now we've lost Tina.
Okay, so
yeah.
No, I'm here. Can you
Perfect.
hear me?
Yes, you can now talk.
Am I back? Well, hello everybody. This is another round of Kiron Talks, online, live, and happy with everyone. Kiron Talks is a series of conversations that have been initiated, who will perhaps join us later. And Kiron Talks is a conversation format where we are talking about learning on online teaching, the way to improve learning and teaching processes, and the use of technology. And today we have a special guest. It's Vero. She's coming to us from Karlsruhe, as far as I understood. So from the other side of the world regarding Berlin. And anything really exciting. She's a drawer. She's drawing comics, and these comics are not just comics like all comics, but these are comics that visualize, for instance, science. She's working with Helmholtz.de, where she has a regular channel to explain certain scientific facts through drawings, through comics. And she has always also published a book and is very active in field, and we want to learn more and how it works to bring certain very difficult ideas into a quite understandable and form.
I think we didn't hear the actual question, which is...
Well, let's... the question was, hello, how do you do?
Hi, I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Okay, the two of you. On my screen, I see the two of you. On the left side, the scientist. On the right side, the artist who helps him to make it understandable. On your Helmholtz channel.
I don't hear.
No, we're having really bad connection now. Sometimes normally it's just a small phase.
Didn't hear me, apparently.
Yeah, it's really breaking up. I think since we're not actually... Well, I mean, we can continue and then cut it later. Yeah, I think that's also okay. But okay, well, actually, Vera, why don't we talk until Tino is back? So yeah. I'm super happy you're here. Tino is... No, sorry, now I'm getting it wrong. Tino, you have to check what your connection is because it's a bit bad. It's kind of ironic, to be honest, because when we started this whole series before, it was right at the beginning of the Corona times, and there was real big problems with internet connection. And one reason we started all of this is we wanted to talk about digital learning, and I think one element of that is like, how do you visualize knowledge? So that's why I'm like super happy to be talking to you today. We know each other through various contexts. We just realized just now, the last time we spoke, we were also doing a podcast. But can you just say a little bit from your side about yourself and what you do?
So I was a biologist. I studied biology, and then after doing my diploma thesis, I think it is, I really realized that it's not meant for me to work as a scientist or to work in the industry. So this lab work stuff, it wasn't for me. And I got quite devastated, and it took me quite a while to figure out what I wanted to do with these skills, because I had always enjoyed learning and understanding things and also teaching, but I didn't want to be a teacher. And at the same time, I already did comics, just for fun, just for myself. And some of my colleagues suggested, why don't you work as an illustrator, freelancer? So then I had to go through all these business things, and I thought, okay, I'm a biologist and I want to be an illustrator, so what about combining these two things? So I really went for specializing in educative content and making science content, and then one thing led to the other, and I ended up doing science comics and comic workshops almost exclusively after a couple of years. And basically that's what I do now. So I'm a visual storyteller.
A visual storyteller with a very successful book about birding.
Bird watching, yeah.
Bird watching, yes. I just like the term birding. I don't know which.
But everybody in Germany, I mean, we've first published the book in Germany, and everybody is like, "Ooh, birding, what's that?" So we're trying to really make the term bigger, make it more known around.
So in English, it's called something like bird watching for, I don't know, people who have no idea about birds, basically.
No, but everybody in England knows what birding is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So I think it's actually derived from the English term birding. Nobody says bird watching because it's too long.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of the style of the book, isn't it? It's this idea of not trying to you've got the biology piece in there, but you're trying to make it very, very easy to consume in a way to get people very, very interested. It starts very ironically and very sarcastically about, look around, all these birds, do you know anything about them? And I must say it's been funny if you listen to a lot of kind of webinars and podcasts over the past months, everyone has said, one of the biggest things, and of course that's only for us lucky enough to have that opportunity, but those of us working from home is we look outside and see the birds and the nature. So I think it's a nice thing. But for me, it's this point you started with this science focus, but you've managed to, in science, it's also about abstracting knowledge and building concepts, but you've managed to kind of develop it into a visual style. How does that process actually work?
Well, for me, it works in that way that I start researching my topic. So I do a lot of reading, and I think like 80% of the things that I read will never make it into the finalized comic, but I need to get a good idea about what I'm actually talking about. And then I also need to make a connection. So I need to find some points where this topic will really hook me and draw me in. And then if I like it, if I'm enthusiastic about this particular field of research or about birds or about insects, whatever, if I can manage to get all excited about it, then I will be able to put it into a form which will then translate to hopefully many other people. So I'm trying to reach that point. One thing is to understand what this thing is all about, and the other point is to get the emotional connection. And then usually I will start to write a rough storyline, or I have an idea of a punchline or a specific kind of any kind of key piece, really. It could be a nice picture, it could be a nice line of dialogue, it could be a funny intro, anything. And then I will build from that, and I will try to write a story around that. And this story should be a true story. It should make sense in terms of storytelling, but it should also be understandable and cover the science to a depth where it's understandable, but also accurate.
You said one of the points is, as you say, this is often called storytelling, and these days we often, I mean, for me, the first thing I think of storytelling is either speaking or writing. What's the difference between kind of speaking and writing and trying to express something visually? Is there a big difference there? When you have your first storyline, does it make a big jump when you start trying to make it visual?
It really depends on the kind. I mean, it also changes in between different projects. Some projects I have a very visual approach right from the beginning, because things kind of like click into place. So I have a certain visualization in mind and start from working from that point. And other stories or with other projects, I start writing up things. I'm making lists. I'm trying to write. I'm basically writing a script, just like in a screenplay. So, but I'm not working scene by scene. I'm working panel by panel, and so it is really whatever clicks first will be served first, and then things will develop from that point on.
So you also work a lot with, you were saying you work a lot with other people, trying to help them to develop this style. What are the kind of challenges people have to think and work visually?
So most people are not really used to telling stories, even though our brains are hardwired to listen to stories and to tell the stories. And there's always a certain structure within every story, which is basically the same. But it's not obvious to people, and they're also not used to analyze it and then to use it, to apply it to another topic. And even though we are also very visual in our own communication, I mean, we're doing this naturally. There's so much visual content all around us, and we're constantly reading this content and we're translating this content. So we're thinking visually and we're communicating visually, but again, we are not trained or used to do this, to use this as a tool. So basically, I'm trying that to ease the anxiety. Because most people will say, okay, but I can't draw. I'm not an artist.
Right.
I'm not a storyteller. I'm not a writer. And I'm trying to really show them that it's all there. You know, you have it in yourself. You just have to train it, and you have to fail, and then you have to repeat. And with every step you're repeating, you're getting better. And I think that those are the two most difficult steps for people to get into it.
I think maybe one point is, I mean, I always think that, as you say, we're telling stories all the time. So often if I'm writing an academic article, I also try and think of kind of the rhythm of the article and what I want to start with, what I want to end with, what I need in the middle bit to kind of build on the argument. And then at the moment in my current work, I'm really working on doing things like writing protocols or some minutes from meetings. And again, that's a different type of way of telling a story. So I think it's more, as you say, one thing is not recognizing that you are using storytelling the whole time. But then the other thing is this jump to say, really, that's a story. So I can also build it more like a story. That kind of spring. But then there's, on top of that, there's the visual piece, like you say, that people just say, well, yeah, but I don't know I don't know how to make it look like it's, how do I visualize the ideas I have?
Yeah, but I mean, you start little by little. You start with simple shapes and simplify. Take a circle and take a triangle and make arrows, make connections in between them. So start really, really simple. I mean, for the most complex, the more complex things get, the more simple the way the visualization should be. So you start from this one, and then you could be actively looking into what kind of visual language do I already have at hand. So what kinds of symbols could I use? What kinds of characters could I develop? And it will grow from that. It's the one thing you could do is to start every day with trying to visualize 5 words. So draw down the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the term love, or when you hear the word idea, or how does success look like for you. And you can start with the very simple things, and little by little you can kind of get more complex, or try to join things and see what you get if you do that. It's basically just like training a muscle in your brain. So you do that playfully, and see how far you get, and then you will recognize very rapidly how that you will get better at doing so.
So what I find really interesting is also, as Tino said at the beginning, you've got this regular blog with the Helmholtz Society. How did that actually come about? Because one would think, okay, that's a serious scientific organization. They're used to having peer-reviewed papers and everything has to be backed up with loads of evidence. And you're coming with your, okay, we're going to tell a story here. We have to abstract from that, and it's got to be fun. Like, how did that all happen? And what is how did you get into that job, and what's it like working in that now?
They actually, so the head of communication at Helmholtz, because they're doing a lot of communication and they have many different channels, many different platforms they use for that. So the head of communications decided that he does want to have a science comic. And it should be a monthly comic, and then they applied for funding and then basically just, put it out there and people could apply, and I applied for the job and I was lucky to get it.
And okay, so you've got this one person who obviously appreciates this kind of the way of doing it, but I imagine also in the process you probably also have to you'll be talking to scientists, or when you've got your thing finished, you have to make sure that those experts have checked it to check you're not trivializing or you haven't made any.
Not with this particular project. So
Okay.
it's pretty much the editor at
Right.
Helmholtz, who does the fact check. And then we basically put it online. But with other projects, I will have more. So I will have chats with scientists, and then we will meet up before, and then I will come up with a story, and we will have backwards. So this kind of conversation to really get the facts right. I mean, it always depends on the people who are working on the project, who are putting this out.
I mean, I was thinking, and I don't know, I didn't read it fully, but I was thinking of one comic I saw recently, which was the kind of headline was everyone's talking about different memory sources, but DNA has always been a form of memory. And I was thinking, okay, that's a kind of a metaphor. And I was wondering, there could be some scientists who say that's the wrong kind of metaphor. If you start going down that route, you're using the wrong paradigm for things. And that's why I was thinking maybe it's something that has to be checked. Or do they see this as a kind of really more of an entry route for people into this kind of knowledge, and so they're a bit more relaxed about whether you're using an unusual metaphor?
Yeah, they are pretty relaxed on that. So this is basically just to put the science out there, to get people interested in a certain topic, and always take care that that we explain things in a way that everybody can understand and everybody can follow along. So this is really just like, it's like the communication and outreach part maybe is more important to them. And if we ever get something wrong, we can be sure that some scientists will get back to us and comment or put out a tweet and say, well, this is actually not accurate. It does happen, but it doesn't happen that often. So I think we're doing a kind of a good job. And that particular DNA comic, it was actually, it was checked because they wanted to put it into print.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as soon as you put something into print and as soon as you hand that out to people, you really have to be very precise with what you do. If you put it on the blog, if you put it on social media, it's kind of like, yeah.
I love that. I love that. As if that was a huge difference. It seems a bit old worldy to say, okay, the minute it's physical, then we take it serious. But otherwise, if it's digital, whatever, it might go to 1 million people within seconds, but doesn't matter. It's only when it's paper that we take it serious. But
I know
yeah.
it's probably more because of the amount of projects and amount of communication that it has to be, that is going through this one office of this huge corporation. And And then if you hand it out to the people who want to put it in the magazine, they're not just working on this magazine, and they, of course, looking at every aspect of it. So everything has to be super duper correct. And but they didn't ask about the metaphor.
No, it's okay. After this, it's coming. I mean, it's interesting because one could actually start maybe a totally new academic discussion just based on the fact that you've abstracted to something. I mean, not this one, but I mean, I'm thinking, for example, again with DNA, with the double helix idea, it's a very, very visual idea, and the visual thing makes it much easier for people to kind of conceive of it and then also to work with it. And it's interesting because I was talking a little while ago to a professor of mathematics, and I was saying, okay, I know that if you're a professor of mathematics, it becomes very abstract. And I was saying to her, I've always found it hard to think of more than 4 dimensions because you can kind of feel what 3 dimensions are, and then you add time on it. That seems okay. And she said, yeah, but as a mathematician, you can think of any dimensions you like. But for me, that's not visual anymore. And she actually said, stop thinking of it as a visual concept because in that moment, you've lost it. And I found that quite interesting. There are certain things where it's too much of a reduction, perhaps.
It is probably also dependent on the field of mathematics.
Yeah, of course.
Because then I'm teaching a PhD course at the Uni of Luxembourg, which is exclusively about communicating science by using comics as a medium. And there's one group who's doing a math comic on, for instance, on Mariam Mirsohani, and her work is extremely visual. And the approach that she had to her field, the research was so visual. So it always depends. And I think this is it's a very, very nice story the students were able to come up with, and it will work extremely well. And we showed it to the supervising professor, and he loved it.
So a lot of these things we're going to have to link underneath so people can follow it up.
Yeah, it will be finished in October, so.
Okay. So we can look out on social media. The other thing I just have to mention for anyone who's listening, Tino keeps on jumping in and out at the moment, and we were talking about it before. It's because he's got a very old school Berlin internet connection, which means he's sharing it with the house, which is about 50 meters away, or a flat. But
is it 50 or 50?
50, I think, 50. So I mean, it's a challenge. But it shows a little bit the kind of garage type style discussions we want to have. And talking of this kind of DIY thing, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the thing that I noticed, and that actually meant that we actually worked briefly together, which is that everything that goes on the Helmholtz blog is also openly licensed. And I think you're very interested in these concepts of open licensing, open educational resources. Can you tell us something about that and how that maybe connects to your interests and your work? Open educational resources.
I'm not sure I did catch the question.
Yeah, so sorry, I was trying to tell 2 things at the same time, that's why. Firstly, I wanted to kind of take a step back and ask you how important, or what is your interest in open educational resources or open licensing? Because for me, one of the examples of that is the blogs you've been working on, and then also how we got to work together. So, and also we know each other also from an OER camp in Hamburg. So this open educational resources, open licensing, it might be something that people who are working in visualization think, especially if they're earning their money from it, they think, okay, how can I get involved in that? I'm giving my work away for free.
Yeah, that actually is a difficult point for artists, because like a large part of our
It's okay, carry on, he's fine.
Hello.
He's fine, he'll be back. Yes. It's a difficult point for artists.
It's difficult
terrible.
because a large part of your earnings you will make by selling the rights to a specific person or an organization. So you just have the way I solve that is that I always take that into account in my calculations and in the proposals I send out to different clients to kind of make it work so that it's okay for me. So I need to make a living from that earning, and that should be okay. And then I always offer them, if it is a scientific organization or any kind of research team, I actually always offer them to then put it under open license, but use the kind of license which can be shared and used commercially, but not edited. And our name should always be on there. And for me personally, this is a good way to do things. I'm not going to get crazy rich anyway by drawing comics, so. Or maybe I will.
Yeah, wait for the next book.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, I really want to get this stuff out there. What I'm all about, what my where I get like most excited is if people, I can reach people and people come back to me and say like, wow, I never thought about physics and I thought I couldn't understand it, but I read this specific comic and I really understood that, and how cool is physics? You know, that's really where my heart goes, like,
yeah, fantastic.
That is just the thing I want to do, to really help people to discover this kind of curiosity in themselves and then see where this curiosity might lead them, because that's actually what keeps you going. And the more things you know, the more educated your decisions in life can be, and that's one thing will lead to the other, as I said before, and that's what I'm all about.
and so I just mentioned again, so if you want to ask a question, we can now hear you, but you tend to be dropping in and out a little bit.
It's very strange. I have no outside reason for this strange technical behavior. I'm very sorry for not being cheerful contribution to the conversation. Yeah, I've heard you have a little bit. I grasped some fragments of your conversation about the birding, about your contribution to understanding science better. I was thinking.
Damn. It's always when we get to the interesting part.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's
some kind of censorship. It's like a quiz. It's like a pub quiz now. We have to guess. Try it. Tino, just turn off your camera. Try turning off your camera. See if that helps. We have to use some of the old school tricks.
Now it's off.
Right, now try again. Now we can hear you much better.
So can you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, so we try without camera. But how long? Okay, I try fastly. The connection between science and drawing and birds came just to my mind because 12th century, and he was having a walk on the mountains and he was seeing birds and talking to them as living beings that also created by God are given with sense. And so there you have it. Before
I think we missed the punchline there.
The urge to language, it's gone again.
It's okay.
You keep
I'm gone
dropping.
again.
Could you put the question in the chat maybe?
Well, now he has to write the whole story. Well, you could draw it. I mean, that would actually be very appropriate now.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I can't help.
But now it's fine again. Now it's fine again. Try again.
Well, I was just saying that even before science was there, the talking through images, through symbols, was an important thing. Not only with, as I said before, Hieronymus Bosch, who used birds and animals and bring his ideas, the understanding of this secret language. And but also before, no, San Francesco de Assisi, who talked to the birds as if they were given, as if they had intelligence. And it's nice because when you think that we have now in a very particular historical period in which there is the overwhelming presence of images, there is a strange transformation of written language. So a lot of texting, but a lot less of reading of novels, for instance, by the younger generation. I would say, although I don't have scientific numbers, I'm quite sure that the quantity of read books by teenagers and twins is lower now than 20 or 40 years ago. So the images become a very important part of the understanding process. It seems to me that the comic solution or the hand-drawn solution, which is then also dependent on the creativity of the artist like Vero, is a very indicative moment of how we are looking for communication and for teaching and for making others understand. You know what I mean? And I don't know Vero, do you ever think about yourself as a phenomenon of your time, of now, of the 21st century?
Um, you mean, and regarding the work I do, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes.
Not very much at the beginning, but even in my work, I realized during the past years that the interest has been rising and rising and rising, and that I have had more opportunities to work in different fields with different people in um, who wanted to engage with comics. So I think that this phenomenon that people are looking for ways to be both emotional, appealing, and informative and precise at the same time. This is definitely rising, and that is what you could frame as phenomenon of our time, definitely.
Yeah, and then now apparently your work at Helmholtz Society is a didactic work, no? Do you have like a communication with them, or do they just say, here we have this thing, this invention, this particular scientific field or phenomenon that we want you to depict? Or do you have also further, let's say, exchange about the way this
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my editor at Helmholtz and I, we have we are closely working together. We are looking for different topics. So we both make suggestions what we find interesting in the science world as of now. And then we usually it works like this, that we agree on a topic, and then I start researching it, and I come up with a script or a certain story idea. I give it back to the editor, and he comments on that, and it goes back and forth like 2 or 3 times, and then the whole thing is ready to be published. And since we've been doing this for almost 6 years in a row, we have a pretty good routine. So even though it involves quite a lot of communication and back and forth, it's kind of like a smooth process by now.
I'd also like to ask a bit about the process, because the one thing I was thinking is, I mean, you're working for the Helmholtz-Gesellschaft, so it could easily be that they would give you like a dossier and say, okay, this is the topic. Our recent reports say this is the latest knowledge about it. Use that, or is it more that I'm wondering how much is it linked to their kind of knowledge creating process that they have within Helmholtz?
I mean, they're pretty open in that regard, that I can come up with any kind of sources, and I can, of course, if they have something on their blog or some actual research done at their institutes, we do link that as well. But I think it's also important to have a broad approach, to have many different sources, and to have also different sources from different media. So you might have written articles, and then you have videos, and then you have podcasts. So they're not very pushy on that regard. That's what I really like about it. So if I come up with the subjects, I will then present my sources, and if he has an idea of what we could work on next, then he will link a couple of sources. But we really try to make it as broad as possible. Because this is not, but basically it's, you know, at the end of the day, it is a PR tool and it is a communication tool, but also it is an educational tool. And as that, it should be as open as possible.
Yeah, but what I think is interesting is you yourself, you're not, you know, a graphic designer in the sense that the kind of the normal idea of, I mean, I hope I'm not being nasty to someone here now, but actually one of my sisters is graphic designer, so I think I have a certain idea. But this idea that you get a contract, they say, right, this is the stuff, now just visualize it. But actually what you're much more involved in, actually, as Tino says, you're actually involved in the kind of the didactics of it as well, because you'll get kind of, okay, this is a theme we're going to do, but you can go out and research various information. You can think how you want to frame it. So it's not just it's not visualization in terms of making it into a nice graphic. It's a whole it's part of a scientific process, I would say.
Yeah, it is. It is a very intense process. I mean, if you break down a story, you would break down a story into scenes and beats and moments, and you have to break down a scientific explanation into these beats as well. You have to have those explanatory steps to make sure that everybody will be able to follow along and that it will make sense as a whole. And that's what I do, and that's why I chose to call myself visual storyteller, because really I think it is about storytelling, it is about education. But if I call myself an educator, then how boring is that? So that would just push people away right from the beginning. So, and
perfect. You've now annoyed the other half of the people that I hadn't annoyed. How boring are those educators? No.
No, but of course it is about educating people, but you can educate people from different, you know, like positions. You can be very patronizing, or you can be on eye level, or you can present something. And this is why comics are so brilliant, because comics come with a inherent promise to be not educational, but to be entertaining and easy to read, and not conflicting on this kind of, I mean, they're just laying there and say, pick me up and read me. I'm going to be funny. I'm going to be good. And then through the back door, you can sneak in all the kinds of bits and pieces you want to have there. You can sneak in the science, you can make it an educational piece, but it will never feel like an educational piece if you're doing a good job.
I mean, this is also a perfect connection to the last thing we should talk about, which is the COVID masks. And I think you called it how to use a mask like a pro. So already it's a kind of a fun concept. Can you tell us a bit about how did that all start, and then how we managed to make it international?
So that started basically through Twitter, because somebody asked, well, couldn't somebody put out a comic on how to use these masks? Probably because I see so many people in the shops and on the streets who are deliberately doing it wrong. I was like, okay, how can we do that? And I checked back with my editor if this would be okay if we did it. And so I just asked them what they would like to have in that, and then I did some research, and at that point we had very little visual material on masks, so I thought it would fit in to just put this out, and we chose to, I mean, I just thought, okay, if we make this comic at this stage of the pandemic, it does make sense to put out an English version as well, and then I approach you to look at my.
Actually, I think you didn't approach. Yeah, actually, in fact, I think you didn't approach me. It was just, I think you asked on Twitter, "Does it make sense to have an English version?" And then I'm like, "Yes, of course." And then you went away and did the English one, and then I was thinking, wait, I know from the thing is, I'm also involved in a master program which is based in Slovenia, but it's extremely international, and we've had summer schools the last 3 summers, and it's always about open education. And I knew there was a lot of people from all over the world in there, so I thought, wait a minute, these things are openly licensed, which means that there wouldn't be any restriction in terms of Helmholtz of this being distributed. And then, I mean, firstly, it was great that you were really open to the idea of, okay, I think you didn't know what you were getting into at the time, but where we thought, okay, maybe we could do it in other languages. And then instead of coming, and I asked it in this WhatsApp group, and instead of it coming back like, yeah, I'd like to have it in, I don't know, Polish, it was suddenly in these languages which even use completely different alphabetic characters. So I think we've got it in. I think my favorite one was Teluga, I think, because I had to look up how many people speak it, and it was 100 million people speak. I hope it's called. Is it called Teluga?
It's Telugu.
Telugu, yes.
Marathi.
Yes.
We did Hindi. I'm now working on the Punjabi version.
Yeah. And we did Indonesian.
Indonesian.
Okay, that had the same character set.
That was, and French.
And
French. That was a different person translating those. That was really great feedback from the Indian community. All those different languages, and all those people were like extremely on point about it, and said like, we need this thing out as soon as possible.
And also for me, you know, for my, as my gran would say, for my sins, I'm British. So we always, as British, we always think, okay, you know, there's a certain number of major languages in the world, British being one of those. But that really amazed me when I started to research some of these languages, just how many people speak these languages, which for someone like me, I'd never even heard of them before. And I don't mind kind of admitting that, because I think that's a lot of people. But just to find this, what looks like a niche language, and it's spoken by probably almost the same amount of people who speak German.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought for me it was this. I mean, it was you had to be open to be part of the process. But for me, the first kind of starting point was the open licensing of the materials, to say basically this is something which we're offering into the world, which can be adapted. It's in terms of licensing, it's not a huge problem to make changes to it. And this, I mean, I don't know how many through the various languages now. I don't know how many people kind of we would be covering through the world on just this very simple 2-page comic, but it's a huge amount of the world you can carry. And then back to our point with what happens when you put things digitally. I mean, I think the hope at least is this has gone right across the world now, and maybe is really helping people outside of the English and German speaking community, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, that was my hope, but it will be distributed. I mean, the people that really put so much effort into these translations, and they were extremely helpful, and they were extremely thoughtful also to make this work out. And so I mean, just the impression I had was that there really is a great willingness and also a great need to get this out there. So that's why I really agreed to do this, because whether it's open license or not, it felt important to step into that point and to be there and to give the material to anyone who really wants it.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's wonderful, really great piece of work. Tino, we're kind of running out of time, but you haven't really had a chance to contribute too much, so I'm going to give you I'm taking your role today, so I'm going to kind of give you the last word.
I see. You're very good.
Penultimate word, not the last, because the last is always to our guest.
Well, no, I can't say much because it was really, really interesting already, and exactly the way to ask how can we show something in a different way. That's the first step, and then especially, I mean, I what I love is that creativity um, is not for granted. I mean, you said storytelling is in everyone. It's not. I have some friends who can tell great stories, and I'm a little bit in the middle, but not as good as my grandpa was. He was a barber, so he was great storyteller, and you have apparently a gift that allows you a part of being an artist who is able to draw, but also to tell stories, which is something special, and it inspires to start thinking about start to continue to dig into this and to ask about different ways on how we bring content over to people or to children. I don't know, and this it was a very interesting, although I lost some fragments, a very interesting conversation. um, so maybe you have some. You already said that stories are broken down, and everyone can start by drawing simple words in pictures. But maybe you have some idea of um, how the people who also want to engage in being more creative with their content. So where they could start.
So the first advice that I always give is start at something that's really at the core of your own interest. So it doesn't matter if it's important to others or if it's stupid or just something in your everyday life. Do find something that really sparks your own interest and curiosity, and then start your storytelling from that point. And don't be afraid of making mistakes, because the creative process, I think, is all about making mistakes. It's all about making 80% very crappy work and having 80% very crappy ideas to get to the 20% of slightly better ideas, which will get you to the 1% of brilliant ideas that you then can use. So don't let yourself be discouraged by putting out a lot of crap, because everybody is. It's just part of the process. And then start simple. Start, if you want to get into drawing, then start using stick figures. You know, making comics is really about telling stories. It's not about making perfect drawings. In fact, if you start to draw too realistically, if you put in too many details, this will distract from your story. So make it simple. Simple is relatable. And then you just make comics, and the first comics you make will be horrendous, and then you make more comics, and they will start to get better, and you read other people's stuff, go out, engage in conversations, watch movies, read books, read other comics, try to get yourself invested in something that you really like, and then do the work on the side and slightly get better.
Ah, creativity. Yes, yes,
It's just shit hard
exactly.
to be. It's for simple design. Don't do
It's
it.
interesting to take this advice now. So if basically from 100% only 1% is perfect, that means that from our podcast now less than 1 minute was really perfect. I don't know which minute
I
that
mean,
was.
if you frame it that way, then it's devastating. Then no one will get engaged into creating content. But if you see it as like it's part of the road, you have to
Yeah.
walk down the road to get to the place you want to be in. So you cannot teleport yourself to that place. So you have to take these 80%. You have to walk down this road, no matter what. Nobody's going to do it for you. So it's just, I mean, yes, it's and discouraging, but knowing that this discouragement is part of the process and that it will lead you to something better eventually with every piece of work you're doing, with every text you write, with every drawing you make, um, then I think it's okay. It's just you just have to embrace failure.
Well, you see, Dominic, that how art and science are still the one thing. Pavlov in his letter to the Soviet youth wrote, the three most important things, and one of them is kind of coherence or modesty. Is that you have to make step by step. You cannot jump the step. You must collect your data one by one, and before you arrive to conclusions. And apparently, this same patience and modesty and humility is required for the artistic process too.
Yeah.
And we're all part of the artistic process. Thanks very much, Vero. That was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Well, see you soon.